Ready? I'm Bill Cameron. I was a pilot of an airplane called well, first of all, co-pilot on an airplane called Little Beaver, and then my own aircraft and crew, the Buzz and Bear, in the 44th Bomb Group.
When you entered the service, how old were you and where were you living?
Well, I was at the University of California. I signed up there, Berkeley. I was 22, and you know, it's hard to remember back that time. And I signed up, and as I say, in the gym at Cal, and then was indoctrinated, I suppose you'd call it, in Fresno in the courthouse. If that answers your question, a roundabout way.
Why did you join?
Oh, that people were joining the Air Corps and other services long before Pearl Harbor. I was in a fraternity, and many of my buddies had already signed up and gone off, came back in great-looking uniforms, and I just swept up in the thing along with a lot of other young men, against my father's advice, and I loved to fly. I just finished my private pilot's course. I got my private pilot's license Friday before Pearl Harbor, so very bad timing.
What are some key highlights you remember about your training before you went overseas?
Oh, really nothing exciting. I loved the advanced training in the AT-6s. That was a lot of fun. And I got a great thrill out of some of our night flying. Loved to peel off and dive for the airfield. Aside from that, staying out of trouble, that was about it.
You recall your trip overseas?
Oh, vividly. We went over in 1st of October 1942, which is fairly early. And we stayed in Newfoundland, barely got into Newfoundland. The weather was so incredibly bad, and there weren't many aids in those days. We made about 5 passes at the field. That was exciting. Finally got in. Stayed there a few days and finally got off in some very bad weather. And I was a co-pilot, and this was the Little Beaver. And we got lost going across the ocean and ended up in Wales somewhere on an RAF Air Sea Rescue base. Well, actually, it was anti-submarine. That was exciting.
When you got lost coming into England, what was it like?
Well, I don't know. We saw the shoreline. We felt like, you know, Columbus or something. And we flew a little bit up and down the coast, and there was an airfield, and we were very happy to see it. Soon we were not in enemy territory.
But it wasn't the airfield you wanted.
Beg pardon?
It wasn't the airfield you wanted.
By a long shot, no. We were supposed to go to Prestwick. One airplane went out over the North Sea even, and was almost, vectored into Germany. That was, I can't remember the name of the pilot, but we weren't the only ones that had that kind of an experience, but we were down safe and there for a long time afterward.
What do you remember about getting to your base for final preparations for your first mission?
For the which mission?
Your first mission.
First mission?
Yeah.
Well, you have to remember that in those days we didn't fly many missions. I mean, you might not fly a mission for once every 2 weeks. And this is 42, fall of 42. In the meantime, the 93rd had flew on off down to Africa. So we were just a handful of airplanes in England, along with B-17. So we didn't fly very many missions, but I remember flying into Shipton the first time, and it was just nothing but mud. We called it Shipton in the mud. And then there were training missions, and then finally, I guess in November, we landed there the 10th of October. And in November, there was a mission, I think. But a lot of us had trouble. It was chronic, that we didn't know how to operate our superchargers. We hadn't had any experience. At high altitude, we were pushed overseas in a big hurry. It's really hard. I guess it was just cold, and it was muddy, and it was we had no grass. I mean, it was just devastation. It was a lonely looking place on the base. I think that's about the best answer I can give you.
As far as your future was concerned, what could you look forward to in terms of ever completing a number of missions and being able to get out of the area? Was there any kind of indication as to what was ahead of you?
Well, that's a kind of a good question. When we left the States, most of us, we young guys, looked a guy that was a year or so older as the older guys, and the older guys seemed to think we'd only be over there a few months, that we'd rotate or something. Very naive. So we were pretty optimistic, but after we had our first casualties, I mean, the whole mood abruptly changed. And then we began to be concerned that somebody's going to get hurt. But after that, when things really went downhill and we started losing our crews, there was a time I know that most of us never expected to get home, period. And I'm, matter of fact, to be honest with you, I'm the only one that did, the only pilot.
Out of your
by
group?
that period, out of my squadron. And,
so during that first few months in England, you lost everyone in your crew?
when you say those first few months, let's take it to May.
Okay.
From October to May. By May, we had lost everybody, including one replacement crew. That answers that, I guess.
When did you go into Africa?
Well, that was the following, well, no, it was that year. Yeah, we were stood down, and anybody that had 15 missions, they were talking about sending home. I had 15 missions, I was thrilled, but that didn't happen because they needed experience. To answer your question specifically, the Kiel raid was May 14th, 1943. That's when we were totally wiped out. And of course, we flew the Ploesti mission in August of that year. So that period in there, we just spent practicing mostly low-level flying.
Tell us a little bit about the Kiel raid.
Well, of course, luckily for me, I wasn't on it, but I was on leave in London because I had just gotten my own crew, the Buzz and Bear crew, just gotten my own airplane. And we went to London. When we came back, it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and we met a young fellow in Norwich, and he was scurrying around trying to find a ride back out the base. Again, I remind you, we didn't fly missions every day, and so, you know, every week was pretty good. So this guy just found out that we had a mission on, and naturally wanted to get back out the base. So we all rented a cab in Norwich and rode the 17 miles out there and got in on the briefing about 5 or 6 in the morning, but the crews were all established by that time. And so I sat with everybody else and waited all day until the airplanes came back or didn't come back. And we had 3 airplanes up from the 67th, and they didn't come back. So that was it. We were gone.
What happened when you were transferred to Africa? What was the operation like from the standpoint of expectations as to what was going to happen?
Well, you know, it was kind of a, remember, we were all quite young. And I think my reaction was probably similar to the others. It was a great adventure. We flew halfway down there to Land's End and went off the next morning across the Bay of Biscay and around Gibraltar and to Oran, and spent the night there, and then went on, and in that article that I showed you the other few months ago, I remember saying that you know, we're sitting out there, one guy's playing the guitar, and we're sitting in the sand and the sagebrush and the grasshoppers and what have you, and waiting for somebody to come by and take us to our billet. And somebody did come by in a truck and threw off a big dirty tent, and that was our billet. But so I never quite got used to Africa. And then when we did put up our tent, and we dug a nice hole so we thought it would be a little cooler, it filled up with locusts. So nobody slept in the tent.
What did you recall about your first missions out of Africa?
We were thrilled because they were safe. We didn't lose hardly anyone. And everybody thought, gee, if we can just stay here long enough, we can finish our tours and go home, you know. Well, of course, it didn't end that way, but it began that way.
When did it change?
Well, I've changed really over Ploesti, and then that was when I became a squadron commander, and we had a lot of replacements came in, all new crews, of course. And I had flown over Foggia just a month before. We didn't have any enemy opposition, no fighters, no nothing. So I sent up 7 airplanes. I was thrilled as a young squadron commander to be able to do that after Ploesti. We had such losses. And we lost all but one of them in our squadron. The Germans sent down about 48 or more Me-109s, and they could do that. They were very mobile. And flew them down to Italy, and they hit that flight really badly. So it was a disaster.
Were you on that flight?
No, it was my first flight as a squadron commander, and I sent my crew with another pilot.
Tell us about the preparations for the Ploesti mission.
Well, they were obviously very, very, what would you say, elaborate. I remember seeing a wonderful movie where they made these models, and they put you, in this movie, you were in the cockpit of your airplane, moving in on the target, you know, so you got perspective and everything. And then out in the desert, they built a mock-up, which was very well done, of the targets, and we'd fly low-level formation over there. And I mean, I can't say enough, nor I've heard other people describe it, and we were all quite impressed by the preparation.
What was the anticipation in terms of the likelihood of getting hurt?
Well, that's a hard for me to answer, because I don't think anybody expects to go out and get killed. You know, I mean, it might be the other fellow, but you never expect it to be you. So I think everybody, even after that famous speech, and when, what was the General Brereton, I guess, had made that remark that, you know, if we lose everybody, it'll be worth it if you get the target. Well, nobody really believed he meant that, literally. So there may have been apprehension. I know in our case, General Johnson had made it very clear that if anybody was really apprehensive about it, they shouldn't go. He didn't want people on the mission that were apprehensive. He didn't think they would perform as well. I'm giving you a long answer here, but I wasn't apprehensive, particularly, and I'm sure others felt much like I do. And there may have been others, again, I say they were scared to death. I don't know. I doubt it. Does that answer the question, you suppose?
Okay, when you took off and moved toward the target area, what do you recall about the highlights of that part of the mission?
Wow, you're asking big questions and don't realize it. One thing I do remember, of course, we were in place, we were on target, on route, on time with the 98. We were right where we're supposed to be. We didn't know anything about the 93rd and the 376, excepting when we looked out and saw all the flames and the smoke. And then we got the idea that something was wrong in our target area. But anyway, I remember that great turn that 98 made and we made, and it looked like a bunch of geese, you know, looking down on top of a flight of geese. It was beautiful. And we were right above the ground, and turned in and started both side by side, which we were supposed to. The only thing was that as we neared the target, which I don't know how many miles it was, but it wasn't very far, the 98 started moving in on us, and in fact, just went through us. And they actually, some of them came out on the other side of it. Instead of, see, we were supposed to go in and turn right. They were supposed to go in and turn right and follow us. We'd follow them in, and then they'd follow us out. Well, we were following them out, strangely enough.
Keep going.
Does that do it? Uh-huh.
What was the impression as you were in the initial point that something was wrong when you saw all these maneuvers going on?
We didn't see any maneuvers going on. But we were far enough back that all happened, I don't know how many minutes, somebody else might know, ahead of us. So when we came along, there was nothing irregular. We were just on course, on time. But as we got towards the last IP, the third IP, you could look across this level plain miles over there, and you see the smoke and flame, like a forest fire way off in the distance. And so everything was normal, excepting that.
What happened to your squadron?
Oh, let me,
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead,
may
go
I
ahead,
add
go ahead,
something here?
Sure.
Once we turned and we were headed in on the targets, airplanes started coming through us from this way. So we had airplanes coming through us. That was kind of scary because they weren't supposed to be there. And then as we approached the target, the 98th was moving through us also. I think they're all headed for that big light you see when you look at the dramatic photos of the target. There was a kind of a funnel there, and I think everybody headed for that funnel.
What was the reason for the planes going in all directions? Was it because someone said, go for any target?
I don't think so. The 376, when they made their turn, they stuck with it, and they went around the target area. Only one or two brave people broke off. When the Norman Apple might have been one of them, and but he was from the 93rd. I can't answer that specifically. But at any rate, the 376 sort of went around the target. The 93rd decided to take the target head on, and so when we got there later, we had the 376 coming back this way, and the 93rd got, I don't know where they were going, all over the place, but over our target. And then the 98th was just doing what they're supposed to, excepting crowding in on us. It was just a natural disbursement of airplanes. If that answers your question, it's hard to explain. But it wasn't certainly planned.
It wasn't planned, but was, when the mistake may have been made at one of the IPs, was there any command given, go for any target? Will anyone ever know whether or not an order was given as things were going wrong to go for any target that you could get?
Well, we never received such a thing because they didn't even know where we were. I can't conceive of somebody who didn't know what we were doing telling us what to do. But I do, you'd have to check on this, but I do understand that General Ent, once things went wrong, did give that order to the two formations he was involved with, targets of opportunity. I don't know that for a fact.
Would have been better in hindsight for the groups, some of the planes to simply get out of the way instead of going for a target?
Well, the way I visualize it, the 389th was doing okay, the 98th was doing okay, the 44th was doing okay. The 376, of course, made the wrong turn. I have the feeling General Ent wasn't real anxious to press the attack, because he didn't. But as far as the 93rd was concerned, I've always felt they would have been much better if they contributed, how would I say it without being too critical, but they really destroyed our opportunity to hit our target, and who knows, it might have put a lot of people in jeopardy at the same time. They should have abandoned their attack or gone back on track and then hit the target like they were supposed to in the first place.
Going ahead, but we'll come back to this. After the mission was over and there was an analysis made on the base, what were some of the conclusions that were made about the whole thing?
I don't think I can answer that question. It's a good one. I don't think I even thought about it. All I wanted to do is rest up a little bit and go on leave, and we did. Went to Tel Aviv, and a lot of them went to Egypt, but just get the hell out of there. But I don't think any of us really stopped to critique the mission. Well, we didn't. It was so big, and there were so many things that happened.
Going back to the mission, can you recall what your feelings were as the action was going on?
Um, when you were so busy, and you had one thing to do, at least as a pilot, and that was to keep, first of all, in my case, I don't know about some of the others, but it was to hit the airplane above me and hit the airplane that slid underneath me, just to hold the wings level and head for General Johnson, who was going great towards our target. So that's all I thought about. And the only other thing I thought about was once we went over the target area and through the smoke and the flame, was to dump the nose of the airplane and get even lower. We were about 225. We're supposed to be stacked up in 25-foot increment, 200 feet, 225, and so on. So I think I was 225, and pushed the nose down and threw the guys off their feet in the back of the airplane, I'm told, and then make a sliding turn, you know, to get the hell out of there. And that's, somebody else mentioned this the other day, that he did the same thing, held the wings level, but it made a sliding turn, thinking it would throw the gunners off. Well, I think that did help. And then we came right over their heads, in big guns, guys looking up, and went on out, and then the next thing was the fighters. But you're so busy, I don't think, I was thinking I certainly wasn't scared. Strangely enough, I've been frightened on many other missions, but more so than I was on Ploesti. I can't explain that. But
when you cleared the smoke in the target area, what kind of a feeling did you have at that time?
Well, I'm sure you've been in an airplane and you've gone through a cloud and you popped out of the cloud on the other side, same thing. We popped out of that thing, and that was it. And that's when I dumped the airplane and down even lower and made the skidding turn. So well, I didn't think.
What was it like getting back?
Well, that was really dramatic. We had, when we made our turn, I think it was Jim Hill or Henderson on my right, I hit a barrage balloon cable, and they got shot up in the nose of Navigator and the Bombardier. So there were, in fact, is one of the most interesting things, there were 6 ME-109s coming in on us, 5, let's say. Nice formation. And I have understood that that was probably an instructor with 4 students, you know, because they didn't know whether we were going to bomb airfields or bomb the oil fields. So they got everything off the ground. Everything was flying, every airplane they had. And so that was pretty exciting to see them coming right straight at you. And then we went and made a nice right turn. And then off we went and trying to stay together as much as we could, the few of us that were there. And the fighters were coming in at us in every direction. And there was one fighter right above us. It looks like you could hit him with a slingshot. And I asked the top gunner, Gibby's name, Sergeant Gibson, I said, Gibby, can you get the guy up above us? You know, I'm flying, I'm looking up like that. And he said, well, he says, I could, he says, but we don't have a tail gun. They've been knocked out, and I didn't know that. And so we had no tail guns, so the waist gunners were holding their guns out and firing alongside the fuselage, and he was trying to cover the tail because that's where the attacks were coming. Exciting. What more can you say? Yeah?
How many did you lose out of your squadron?
You know, I can't answer that exactly because there were 16 that went in. 2 of us landed back at base, General Johnson and myself. Reg Carpenter was with us until almost all the way across the Mediterranean. He ditched. Mitchell was up with the Johnson, and when we went in, he went to Turkey. But behind there, Warden Weaven was right behind me, I guess. They crashed. I can't give you an account because I just never I'd never wanted to know, perhaps.
When you got back to the base, what happened during the briefing?
We didn't have a briefing. We went to bed, as far as I know. We're exhausted.
Did they have a briefing afterward, later?
You know, I don't recall one. I'm sure there was a critique, but I just don't recall.
They didn't ask you personally what you saw on the mission?
Oh, they do, and I don't recall it. I think they might have been easy on us and let us kind of go off free. We always had critiques. We were always interviewed. But what would I have said, you know, except what I've just told you. And I mean, you can't comment on the people that made the wrong turn. You can't comment on all these other things because you didn't know about them. You just knew, but just around you, the airplanes around you.
How long
That's
did it,
all you can comment on.
How long did it take you to learn many of the facts about the Ploesti mission?
Oh, I didn't really learn a lot of them, most of them, until late in the 1960s. I had that wonderful book on Ploesti that we all call sort of a Bible. And I had it in Ecuador, and I had to give a talk in Ecuador on the Ploesti mission, and I got that book and I read it. Got a lot of my facts. I didn't know how many airplanes there were and how many went down, how many people were killed, or how many guns we had, or any of those details. I didn't know about the tailwinds, you know, all the things that separated the formation.
Have you ever talked to General Johnson about it?
Many times.
What was his opinion about it?
Well, if you read the article that I'm leaving with you, you will find out that he says, and Bill Cameron and I apparently saw in the same light. That's about all I can tell you there. We agreed in our opinion.
Now, after the mission, what do you recall about some of your most significant missions?
None of them were that significant. I can't recall a single one. Excepting one, I was command pilot, and you know, the German fighters were pretty well gone. Still a lot of flak, and I'm riding along there comfortably at whatever it was, 18,000 feet with the crew I was with, and some flak went off very close to us, and I jumped foot. I mean, I just didn't expect any more of that sort of thing. So I've decided the war wasn't over yet. Other than that, I can't remember. The missions were a little flak, and that was about all.
When did you go back to the States?
And my last mission, by the way, was in April 1945. I went back to the States in May of 1945.
And what did you do?
Oh, I stayed in the Air Force for 28 years. So.
Did you go to any other combat areas?
No, no.
You still continued
I was
flying?
an old man. I was 25 years old.
Did you continue flying?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What did you do in that period of time, just briefly?
Well, I first was stationed in the Pentagon briefly, and then I went to signed to the Air University. I was there for 4 years when it was just starting up. That was a great assignment. And then when Korea came along, I was stationed in the Pentagon again. And then after that, I was in 2 years on Guam, and then after that, 2 years in Hawaii in the Joint Staff, and then back to Ohio for SAC, back to SAC, and B-47s. Let's see. Then we went to Ecuador for 3 years, and then back to the base commander in Orlando, Florida. For only a year. I decided I wanted to get out of the service, so I did. And so I retired in '69.
As you look back on your tour of duty during World War II, what stands out in your mind as your most memorable or significant experience?
Well, it was 30 months. Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier that, you know, we lost an entire squadron when I was, and then another later on. And that was a long, grim part of my life. And so I remember those periods as being just awful, and losing all my friends, either PWs or killed in action or whatever. I don't have any specific thing. I just have long periods of time that either were pretty good or were really bad. It never really was good, because we were always losing people. But later on in the war, when we had the fighter cover and everything, we didn't lose many people. And I really can't answer that question specifically.
How did you change during your war years? What happened to you?
Well, I think I grew up. But other than that, nothing, I don't think.
What do you want the world?
I have, like, well, being over there 30 months and having a camera, I have a lot of photographs. And so from the beginning to the time, and here I was, 22 years old, you know, one picture I have holding a pup, and I look very young. I look very young. Then I have another picture when I'm a lieutenant colonel, maybe pinning a decoration on some guy, and I look pretty mature. You know? So, but I don't know that it changed me inside very much. I was square in the beginning, I was square at the end.
What do you want the world and history to remember about your contribution to the war effort?
Oh dear, these are such interesting questions. I don't even think I can, I don't think I want anything particular. As I said last night, if you recall, if I hadn't flown the Ploesti mission, most of my friends would never even know I was in the war. And that got so much attention. And so I'm grateful for that, because there were a lot of other missions that were just as grim and scary. 2 missions in a row, for example, early. We were in number 3 position here. And this airplane and this airplane got shot down the first day. We were about the first group to fly 2 days in a row, by the way. And the next day, what happens? The lead airplane and this one got knocked down. 2 days in a row, I saw those 5 airplanes. We were still sitting here all by ourselves and headed home. We made it, though.